I want to make art that makes people feel a little bit different after they see it. Just a little bit, you know? Definitely have a history with depression, and my art is linked with my depression. But that's not what this story is about. The story is about how I need to be able to work on my projects whether I'm in a good mood, whether I'm in a bad mood, whether it's raining, whether it's shiny. Hi, I'm Taylor. I'm the artist behind Lab Monkey Creative. And I want to tell you a story about a picture I made one rainy day. One of my biggest goals is to overcome the impulsiveness of basing my art and fueling it by my emotions. One of the ways to overcome that impulsive behavior is to actively seek out inspiration from everywhere. The first day of class at my new school, Savannah College of Art and Design, we cover this photographer, Carl Blossfeld. It was very easy to be inspired by his work. The references made me think about a lot of things. Made me think about sad things. Made me think about happy movies that I remember. Made me think about summer camp. Made me think about how sometimes beautiful things can, at first appear a bit creepy or off even. Thought about things like life and the universe. It made me think about how all these things are connected, and I wanted to see how I could show that. It made me think about life in a tangible sense, in this weird way, about how it just creeps out of the earth in all different kinds of forms, and then does its best to experience as much as it can and survive, and then just goes back to the earth one day, like alien egg pods. I saw arms and creatures and eyes and all these things in these plants that Blossfeld found in his backyard. It really got my mind going, and I thought about how I could try and channel this same kind of vibe into a work of my own. Sometimes I get a very clear mental image of what I want to make immediately after I'm inspired, but a lot of times I also like to mull things over and think about it for some time. I wanted to make a piece that visualized my struggles with consistency, but also celebrated my progress in becoming more consistent. Just not more consistent on YouTube, unfortunately. I wanted to make something that represented life, which is a common theme in my work, and I wanted to make something that was perhaps visually not pretty and perhaps lives in an unkind environment, but is also its own special kind of beautiful. I still don't have a title at this point, but I start working with a human model in Character Creator 4, and I name her Nouveau. I begin putting Nouveau into a pose that I would think will represent the basic nativity of the scene, and with my mind wrapped around this idea a little more clearly, I'm ready to dive in. Sometimes I wake up early. Wake up, it's a brand new day. Usually I don't, though. Whenever it is that I start my mornings, it's usually a slow, quiet affair. Say good morning to my cat Miso, and get my coffee or tea in my official Lab Monkey Creative pork rind coffee mug, of course. Sometimes I like to go out in town, run some errands. maybe get somebody else's coffee. Part of working on my creative consistency has been to keep regular office hours. And I generally put everything on Do Not Disturb mode. I don't listen to podcasts while I'm working, but I do play some music and generally like to just focus in and get right into the project. I start by building this general pod shape that will encase Nuvo. And I want to make these pods sort of unkind and ungentle looking. And in order to protect itself, in order to protect this life that it's holding inside, it needs to send a message or to stay away. So I sculpt it with these spiky sort of tendril-like, kind of like fingers, kind of like Venus flytraps, so that maybe insects approaching think that it's going to close in on them. Like they're a mouth or teeth about to close down, so they hopefully scare away the squirrels and things. Always referring back to Karl Blossfeld's references. I also lay out a curve shape in Blender that will show me where the stem is going, so that I can start arranging the other pods down the stalk. I briefly experiment with some materials and particle systems to get an idea of the kind of fuzzy coating I want around the stalk of the plant and around the pods themselves. Once I get the general idea of one completely open pod with Nuvo inside, I start to connect that pod to the stalk itself, and then I start to think about how the other pods are going to be arranged. The other pods are made by duplicating the first and using the pose tool in sculpting mode to close the fingers of the pods just a little bit more with each. I also arrange these in what looks like a logical but also visually pleasing sense. I start thinking about the whole backstory behind this plant and what kind of world it would be living in. I imagine these pods growing very slowly over time. Maybe only one of them becomes fertilized every year. Maybe only one opens up every year with a seed inside. The closed pods, which I make out of a sphere and sculpt some seams pattern, and I duplicate these and arrange them down the stalk. And it gets down to this very satisfying repetitious pattern. So I'm trying to think of how these pods, while scaring away predators, will attract whatever it is that pollinates or fertilizes these seeds each year. So I make this sort of growth on its head with these little lights, and these lights are what come out of the seeds in the very beginning. But then they grow into this sort of hair formation with light at the end. But it makes for some beautiful shots, and it added a lot to the composition. I did my best to emulate Karl Blossfeld's approach to taking the photographs of the plants. I set up a very highly textured wall behind it, and I put a single, very strong light source so that we could see some really strong shadows up against that wall, and it would make all the lights along the seeds really pop. Which brings us to the overall vibe of the piece. Like I said, I'm heavily leaning into the German expressionism that I felt coming from these pieces. I said felt coming from these pieces? Yeah, never mind. No. In addition to the black and white, I give it a slight blue and yellow tint, as well as a very heavy vignette feel. After I've got everything looking how I like and I've got some cameras set up, I get some test renders and I post some process work to places like ArtStation and Instagram. When I was growing up, I wasn't so much a fan of social media, but as an artist, I've come to embrace it as another way to help keep my creative consistency. It's almost like a way to hold myself accountable to some other people that are expecting me to post work of mine regularly, to see what I'm up to, and the culmination of my work grow over time. I love being able to scroll down and see how far I've come since I posted that piece last year or even last month. It's a struggle for me to keep consistent, and I hope that this 3D render I made and this video can show you how I'm progressing with this struggle and how I've learned a lot and how I've overcome a lot. I hope I'm able to make a lot more in the future, and most importantly, I hope that it's the best video that I've made yet. If you think so and would like to let me know, please don't hesitate to leave a comment, share the video, like it, send a message out to me, let me know what you think. I would be glad to hear from you. And I look forward to seeing you next time on Lab Monkey Creative. Thank you.